My husband mocked our marriage at a luxury dinner. I walked out and built an empire he envied. My name is Laverna, and I am 34 years old. I grew up in Kansas City, Missouri, the kind of place where people say what they mean and mean what they say. That night, I sat in the most expensive restaurant I had ever been to, wearing the most beautiful dress I owned, thinking my husband was about to celebrate 10 years of our love. I had no idea that before dessert arrived, my entire world would shatter. But here is the thing. That shattering became the best thing that ever happened to me. Before we dive into this story, I would love to know where you are watching from today. Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if stories about women rising from heartbreak inspire you, please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. Trust me, you will want to hear what my husband said in front of all those people and what I did next. Let me take you back to where it all began because you need to understand the foundation before you can understand how it crumbled. I met Derek when we were both 22 years old. It was a Tuesday afternoon in October, and I had stopped at this tiny coffee shop downtown, the kind of place with mismatched chairs and handwritten menus on chalkboards. I was in my final year of college studying marketing, and I had a paper due the next day that I had barely started. I was stressed, exhausted, and honestly not in the mood to talk to anyone. Derek walked in wearing a suit that was slightly too big for him, carrying a briefcase that looked brand new. He was a sales rep just starting out at some company I had never heard of. He ordered black coffee, no sugar, and when he turned around, he bumped right into me, spilling half his cup on my notebook. I should have been furious. That notebook had 3 weeks of research notes in it, but something about the way he apologized, so genuinely mortified, so desperate to make it right, made me laugh instead. He bought me another coffee, then another, and before I knew it, we had been talking for 3 hours. My paper was late, but I did not care. Those early days with Derek felt like something out of a movie. We would walk along Country Club Plaza window, shopping at stores we could never afford. We would split a pizza because neither of us had money for our own. We would sneak into the second movie at the theater after our first one ended because we wanted to spend more time together but could not afford another ticket. Derek had this fire in him back then. He would talk about his dreams, his plans, his vision for the future. He would hold my hands and look into my eyes and say things like, "One day, Laverna, I am going to give you everything you deserve. A big house, nice cars, vacations, to places we cannot even pronounce. Just wait, I am going to make it happen." And I believed him. God help me, I believed every word. We got married 2 years later in a small ceremony at the church where my grandmother had been baptized. 50 guests, homemade decorations, a cake my aunt baked herself. My dress was borrowed from my cousin, and Derek wore his father's suit, which finally fit him properly. It was not fancy, but it was ours, and I remember thinking I had never been happier. Our first apartment was a joke looking back. 1 bedroom that was barely big enough for our bed. A kitchen where you could touch the refrigerator and the stove at the same time. Furniture we had pieced together from thrift stores and garage sales. But we made it work. We made it beautiful in our own way. I was working full-time at a small marketing firm while Derek climbed the ladder in sales. I would wake up at 5:30 every morning to make him breakfast before his long commute. I would iron his shirts the night before, lay out his ties, pack his lunch because we could not afford to eat out. When he came home defeated after losing a big account, I would hold him and tell him that tomorrow would be better. When he doubted himself, I became his biggest cheerleader. And slowly, things started to change. Derek got promoted to regional manager, then district manager, then director. Each promotion meant a bigger paycheck, a nicer car, a better apartment. I was so proud of him, so proud of us. I felt like all those early sacrifices were paying off. When Derek got offered the position of vice president of sales at a major distribution company, there was just one catch. We had to move to Chicago. It meant I would have to leave my job, the company where I had been working for 6 years, where I had finally started making a name for myself. There was talk of promoting me to senior marketing strategist. It was everything I had worked toward, but Derek needed me. He said Chicago was our chance, our big break, and I loved him. So I said yes. I found another marketing job in Chicago, nothing special. Entry level really, despite my years of experience. I told myself it was temporary, that I would work my way up again. But honestly, I was so focused on supporting Derek that my own career became an afterthought. The changes in Derek happened so gradually that I almost did not notice them at first. It started with small things. He stopped asking about my day. He would come home late smelling like expensive whiskey and cigars, talking about golf games with CEOs and dinners at private clubs. He bought a new wardrobe, all designer labels, and started correcting my grammar when I spoke. I remember the first time I felt truly invisible. We were at a dinner party at his colleague's penthouse, and someone asked what I did for a living. Before I could answer, Derek jumped in and said, "Oh, she works at some little agency. Nothing you would have heard of." Then he changed the subject to his latest sales numbers. I stood there with my mouth half open, feeling like I had been slapped. Later, when I asked him about it, he just shrugged and said I was being too sensitive. "I did not mean anything by it, babe. Relax." But it happened again and again. Each time I told myself it was nothing. Each time I pushed down the hurt and focused on being a good wife. I thought maybe if I tried harder, if I was more supportive, if I made our home more beautiful, he would go back to being the man I married. I did not realize it then, but I was slowly disappearing, becoming a shadow, becoming exactly what Derek apparently wanted me to be. The cracks in my marriage did not appear all at once. They crept in like water through a basement wall so slowly that by the time I noticed the damage, it was already extensive. The first time I truly felt humiliated was at a dinner party we hosted at our new house. Derek had insisted we buy this massive home in one of Chicago's wealthiest neighborhoods. 6 bedrooms for 2 people, a kitchen bigger than our entire first apartment. I did not want it, but Derek said it was important for his image. I spent 3 days preparing for that dinner party. I cooked everything from scratch. Beef Wellington that I had practiced 4 times to get right. Homemade pasta, a dessert that required 17 different steps. I cleaned every corner of that enormous house until my back ached. I wanted everything to be perfect. When the guests arrived, Derek introduced me the same way he always did now, with a dismissive wave and a condescending smile. "This is my wife, Laverna. She works at some small company downtown." No mention of my degree, no mention of my experience, no mention of the fact that I had spent years building campaigns for brands he used every day. At one point during dinner, the conversation turned to marketing strategies. One of Derek's colleagues was complaining about their company's recent campaign. Without thinking, I offered a suggestion, something I had seen work beautifully at my previous firm. It was good advice. I knew it was good advice. Derek laughed. Not a warm laugh, but a sharp cutting sound that silenced the table. "Honey," he said, and the way he pronounced that word made it sound like an insult. "Let us leave the business talk to the people who actually understand it. Okay, why don't you go check on dessert?" Everyone at the table looked down at their plates. A few people chuckled nervously. Derek's boss gave me this look of pity that made me want to crawl under the table and die. I excused myself and went to the kitchen, where I stood over the sink and tried very hard not to cry. When I came back with the chocolate souffle, I smiled like nothing had happened. That night, when I asked Derek why he had done that, he told me I was overreacting. He said he was just joking around, that I needed to learn to take a joke. But it was not a joke. I knew it was not a joke. And somewhere deep inside, I think he knew too. The distance between us grew wider every day. Derek hired a housekeeper because he said it was beneath me to do chores. But I knew the real reason. He did not want me to have a purpose in that house. He wanted me to be decoration, something pretty to show off at parties and then put away when the guests left. He redecorated the entire house without asking my opinion, hired some expensive designer who covered everything in cold gray tones and modern furniture that looked impressive but felt impossible to sit on. When I mentioned that I missed our old apartment with its warm colors and comfortable couches, Derek looked at me like I had said something stupid. That was poor people furniture, Laverna. We are not poor anymore. No, I thought. You are not poor anymore. because I never cared about the money. The wives of Derek's colleagues were even worse. They would look at my clothes, my hair, my shoes, and I could see them calculating exactly how much everything cost. When Derek bought me expensive jewelry, they would compliment it with fake smiles that never reached their eyes. When I tried to join their conversations about charity boards and country clubs, they would find subtle ways to exclude me. You could not possibly understand, they seemed to say without words. You are not really one of us. One afternoon, I ran into Margot at a grocery store of all places. Margot had been my roommate in college, my best friend during those years of late-night study sessions and cheap wine. We'd lost touch after I moved to Chicago the way you do sometimes when life gets busy. She looked exactly the same. Wild curly hair, paint stains on her jeans, that huge, genuine smile that made everyone around her feel like the most important person in the world. Laverna! She grabbed my arm. Oh my God, it is really you. I heard you moved here years ago, but I never ran into you and I kept meaning to look you up. But you know how it is. And oh my God, you look amazing. But also, you look exhausted. Are you okay? Margot always talked like that. Everything running together in one breathless stream. We went for coffee, then for lunch, then for more coffee. And before I knew it, I was telling her everything. The way Derek dismissed me, the way I felt invisible, the way I had somehow become a person I did not recognize anymore. Margot listened without interrupting. When I finally stopped talking, she reached across the table and took my hands. Laverna, she said quietly, do you remember sophomore year when you organized that entire fundraising campaign for the Children's Hospital? You raised more money than any student organization had ever raised. You were incredible. You had all these ideas, all this energy. What happened to that person? I could not answer because I did not know. I will tell you what happened, Margot continued. You let someone else define your worth. And honey, that is the biggest mistake any of us can make. I drove home that night in tears, not because Margot had been cruel, but because she had been right. Somewhere along the way, I had stopped being Laverna and started being Derek's wife. And Derek's wife was not allowed to be anything more than a supporting character in his story. But I was not ready to do anything about it. Not yet. I still believed things could get better. I still believed that if I just tried hard enough, I could save my marriage. I had no idea how wrong I was. The pain did not stay quiet for long. It grew louder with each passing week, each dismissive comment, each moment where I realized my husband saw me as nothing more than an accessory. Derek's company threw an elaborate holiday party at one of Chicago's most prestigious hotels. It was the kind of event where women wore dresses that cost more than my monthly salary, and men compared their stock portfolios over champagne. Derek insisted I buy something new, something that would represent us properly. He even picked out the dress himself, a silver gown that was beautiful, but felt like a costume. I remember standing in front of the mirror before we left, not recognizing the woman staring back at me. She looked polished and elegant, but her eyes were empty. I forced a smile and told myself this night would be different. Maybe Derek would introduce me proudly. Maybe he would hold my hand and look at me the way he used to. At the party, I found myself in a conversation with the wife of the CEO, an elegant woman named Pamela, who collected art and sat on 3 charity boards. She asked polite questions about my background, and when I mentioned my marketing career, her eyes actually lit up. "Oh, that is fascinating," she said. "We are actually looking for someone to help with marketing for one of my foundations. Would you be interested in talking more about it?" Before I could respond, Derek appeared at my elbow. He must have been listening from nearby. "Laverna's little job keeps her pretty busy," he said with that condescending smile I had grown to hate. "Besides, she is not really equipped for foundation-level work. No offense, honey, but Pamela needs someone with serious credentials." Pamela's face flickered with something. Discomfort, maybe, or pity. She excused herself moments later. I stood there feeling like I had been hollowed out. My own husband had just told one of the most influential women in Chicago that I was not good enough. and he had done it right in front of me as casually as if he were commenting on the weather. In the bathroom, I locked myself in a stall and cried for 20 minutes. When I came out, I fixed my makeup and returned to the party with a smile that felt like glass. A week later, I discovered the truth about Derek's feelings. It happened by accident. I came home early from work, a headache pounding behind my eyes, and heard his voice coming from the study. The door was slightly open. "Laverna," I heard him say into his phone. "Come on, Harrison, you know the deal. She is convenient, does not ask questions, does not make demands. If I divorced her now, it would cost me a fortune with how much the company has grown. Better to just keep things as they are." I stopped breathing. "Besides," Derek continued with a laugh, "it is not like she has anywhere else to go. What would she even do without me? Go back to Kansas and work at some supermarket." I heard Harrison say something I could not make out, and then Derek laughed again. "Caroline? She is something else. Beautiful, ambitious, actually understands my world. If I were not married, well, you know how it is." I backed away from the door slowly, silently, my whole body trembling. In the kitchen, I poured myself a glass of water with shaking hands and tried to process what I had just heard. My husband did not love me. He saw me as a convenience, an accessory, something to maintain appearances while he dreamed about another woman. Every fear I had buried, every doubt I had dismissed, came flooding to the surface all at once. That night, I did not confront him. I could not. I was too shocked, too hurt, too overwhelmed by the magnitude of his betrayal. Instead, I lay beside him in our expensive bed, in our enormous house, and stared at the ceiling, wondering how I had ended up here. Over the next few weeks, I started paying attention in ways I had not before. I noticed how often Derek texted late at night, angling his phone away from me. I noticed the way he smiled when certain emails came through. I noticed the name Caroline popping up again and again. I did not check his phone. I did not need to. I already knew. But knowing was not enough. I needed a plan. I started small. I opened a savings account at a bank Derek did not use in my name only. Each week I transferred small amounts, nothing that would show up on our shared accounts. I researched divorce laws in Illinois, learning about equitable distribution and marital assets. I was not ready to leave yet, but I was preparing. I also reached out to Margot again. Over lunch, I told her everything. The conversation I had overheard, my suspicions about Caroline, my fears about what would happen if I actually left. Margot did not tell me what to do. She was too good a friend for that. But she did remind me of who I used to be, of the dreams I had before I had sacrificed them for someone who did not deserve my sacrifice. "You used to make these incredible candles," she said suddenly. "Remember junior year you sold them at that craft fair and made like $500 in a weekend. People were obsessed with them." I had forgotten about that. I used to love making candles. The science of it finding the right wax and wick combinations, the art of it blending scents into something entirely new. I had stopped after college because life got busy, because there was never enough time, because it seemed like such a small, silly hobby. But maybe small did not mean worthless. Maybe silly did not mean stupid. That night, I went online and ordered some supplies. Nothing major. Just some wax, some wicks, some essential oils. I told myself it was just something to do with my hands, a distraction from the constant ache in my chest. I had no idea it would become so much more. Everything came to a head on the night of our 10th wedding anniversary. Derek made a big show of the reservation, one of the most exclusive French restaurants in Chicago, the kind of place where you needed connections just to get on the waiting list. He told me to wear something special, that this was going to be a night to remember. I chose a red dress, one I had bought for myself months ago and never worn. It was bold in a way I rarely allowed myself to be anymore. I spent extra time on my makeup, my hair, everything perfect. A part of me still hoped, even after everything, that this could be a turning point, that maybe Derek would look at me across the candlelit table and remember why he married me. When we arrived at the restaurant, I realized it was not going to be an intimate dinner for two. Derek had invited 3 other couples, all business associates and their wives. Harrison was there with his wife, Penelope. There was also a man named Grant who worked in finance, and his wife, Bethany, and another couple I had never met before. My heart sank, but I kept smiling. Maybe this was Derek's way of celebrating showing off our milestone to his important friends. The meal started pleasantly enough. Appetizers, wine, small talk about vacations and investments. I stayed quiet for the most part, nodding along, trying to find places to contribute. Every time I opened my mouth, Derek seemed to jump in before I could finish. As the evening wore on, Derek drank more and more. His voice got louder. His jokes got edgier. I watched him with growing unease, recognizing the signs. This was the Derek who emerged when he was trying to impress people, the one who would say anything for a laugh. Halfway through the main course, Harrison raised his glass. To Derek and Laverna, he said, 10 years of marriage. What is your secret, Derek? How do you make it work? I held my breath. This was the moment. This was where my husband could say something kind, something loving, something that would acknowledge the decade I had given him. Derek leaned back in his chair with a smug smile. You want to know the secret? He glanced around the table, making sure everyone was listening. Find a wife with no ambition. Seriously. Laverna here, she is perfectly happy just being at home, not asking questions, not causing problems. She does not need a career or hobbies or any of that complicated stuff. Just keep her comfortable, and she is grateful. The table went quiet for a moment, that awkward silence where no one knows how to respond. I mean, honestly, Derek continued the wine, making him bolder. I have no idea what she would do without me. Probably go back to Kansas and work at some grocery store or something. But hey, that is what makes it work, right? Find someone who needs you. A few people laughed nervously. Bethany looked down at her plate. Penelope shot me a glance filled with something like pity. I sat there frozen, the words washing over me like ice water. This was not a joke. This was not Derek being careless or thoughtless. This was Derek in front of everyone we knew, revealing exactly how he saw me. As a burden. As a nothing. As someone so pathetic that I should be grateful he even kept me around. Something shifted inside me in that moment. Something that had been cracking for years finally broke completely. I placed my napkin on the table very carefully. I took one last sip of wine, giving myself a moment to steady my hands. Then I stood up. Everyone looked at me. Derek frowned, confused. Where are you going? Dessert is coming. I looked at him. Really looked at him. And I did not see the man I had married anymore. I saw a stranger who had spent 10 years slowly erasing me, and I saw myself allowing it to happen. 10 years, I said, and my voice came out stronger than I expected. 10 years I stood beside you. I made sacrifices you never even noticed. I gave up opportunities so you could chase yours. And this is what you think of me. This is how you describe our marriage to your friends. Derek's face went red. Laverna, sit down. You are making a scene. No, Derek, you made a scene. You just did not realize you were doing it. I pushed my chair in. I am done being your background character. I am done being your convenient little wife who is too pathetic to survive without you. You cannot just leave, Derek hissed, glancing around at the staring faces. Think about how this looks. I picked up my purse. I do not care how it looks, Derek. I care about how it is, and how it is over. I walked away from that table past the shocked waiters through the elegant lobby out into the cool Chicago night. I heard Derek calling my name behind me, but I did not look back. I could not. On the sidewalk, I stopped and took a deep breath. My hands were shaking. My heart was pounding. I had no idea what I was going to do next, but for the first time in years, I felt something I had almost forgotten how to feel. I felt alive. The weeks that followed were the hardest of my life. I stayed with Margot, at first sleeping on her couch in her apartment above the bakery. The smell of cinnamon and vanilla would wake me up every morning, and for a few seconds before I remembered, I would feel almost peaceful. Then reality would come crashing back, and I would remember that I had walked out on my marriage, my home, my entire life. Derek called constantly. Sometimes he was apologetic, swearing he did not mean what he said, promising to change. Other times he was angry, telling me I was being ridiculous, that I was throwing away everything we had built. Once very late at night, he called crying, begging me to come home. I blocked his number. I found a tiny studio apartment near downtown, the kind of place that made our first apartment look luxurious. One room that served as bedroom, living room, and kitchen. A bathroom so small I could barely turn around. But it was mine. Every square inch of it was mine. I filed for divorce. Derek tried to fight it. At first, tried to make things difficult, but his lawyer eventually convinced him that a prolonged battle would only damage his precious reputation. We settled out of court. I did not ask for much, just enough to start over. A small portion of what I was legally entitled to. I did not want his money. I wanted my freedom. During the day, I went through the motions at my marketing job, but my heart was not in it anymore. At night, I would come home to my empty apartment and wonder what I was supposed to do with the rest of my life. That is when I started making candles again. I had ordered those supplies weeks before the anniversary dinner, and they were still sitting in boxes in the corner of my apartment. One evening, feeling desperate for something to do with my hands, I opened them up. The first few attempts were disasters. The wax did not set properly. The wicks drowned. The scents came out either too faint or overwhelmingly strong. I burned myself twice and ruined a perfectly good pot. But I kept trying. Night after night, I experimented. I researched. I adjusted. Slowly, very slowly, I started getting it right. There was something therapeutic about the process. The measuring, the heating, the careful pouring, the way different oils combined to create something entirely new. It required focus, precision, creativity. It required me to be present in a way I had not been in years. Margot let me use a corner of her bakery kitchen to work since my apartment did not have proper ventilation. She would close up for the night and I would come in spreading my supplies across her prep counter while she baked bread for the morning. "You know," she said one night, watching me pour a batch of lavender vanilla candles, "these are really beautiful." I shrugged. "They are just candles." "They are not just candles. Look at them." She picked one up, turning it in her hands. "The color, the finish, the way the scent hits you. This is something special, Laverna. You could sell these." I laughed. "Sell candles? Come on." "Why not?" "There is a craft fair next month at Union Park. I am doing a booth for the bakery. You should get your own table." I told her that was ridiculous, that I was not ready, that no one would buy them, but the idea took root in my mind and would not let go. 2 weeks later, I found myself setting up a folding table at the Union Park Craft Fair, 50 candles arranged in neat rows, each one labeled with a handwritten tag. I had named them things like Reclaim, which was a bold blend of bergamot and sandalwood, and Fresh Start, which was crisp cucumber and white tea, and Second Chance, which was warm vanilla and amber. I thought I would be lucky to sell 10. I sold all 50 in less than 2 hours. People kept coming back, asking if I had more, taking my phone number, asking where they could buy online. By the end of the day, my head was spinning with possibilities I had never allowed myself to imagine. That night, I sat in my tiny studio, surrounded by empty boxes and a notebook full of contact information, and I let myself cry. Not from sadness this time, but from something else entirely. Hope. The online store launched 2 weeks later, a simple Etsy shop with a handful of products and photos I had taken on my phone. I figured I might get a few orders a week if I was lucky. The first month I made $8,000, more than my marketing salary. The second month I made $12,000. By the third month I had quit my job and rented a small warehouse space on the south side. I was pouring candles 16 hours a day, barely sleeping, running on adrenaline and determination. Margot came over one night to help me pack orders. "You need to hire people," she said, taping a box shut. "You cannot do this alone." I cannot afford to hire people. You cannot afford not to. You are going to kill yourself at this rate." She was right, of course. Margot was always right. I hired my first employee a week later, then 2 more. Then we needed a bigger space. 6 months after walking out of that restaurant, I was running a real business, Reclaim Candles. I had named it after that first scent, the one that reminded me that it was never too late to take your life back. The local press started paying attention, a small article in a neighborhood paper, then a feature in Chicago Magazine about women entrepreneurs, then a spot on the morning news where I told my story the censored version anyway, about leaving everything behind to follow a dream. That is when Diana walked into my life. Diana was the kind of woman who commanded attention just by entering a room. Tall, elegant, with silver gray hair she wore in a sleek bob and eyes that missed nothing. She owned a chain of upscale gift shops across the Midwest, the kind of places where everything was beautifully curated and nothing was cheap. She had seen the news segment. She had ordered some samples. And now she was standing in my warehouse holding a candle called Liberation up to her nose and smiling. "This is exceptional work," she said. "I want to carry your line in all 12 of my locations." I stared at her. "All 12? Exclusive distribution. My customers are going to love this. What do you say?" I said yes, obviously. The Diana deal changed everything. Suddenly, Reclaim Candles was not just a cute side hustle or a local success story. We were a brand, a real brand with real growth potential. I expanded the product line. Diffuser oils, handmade soaps, gift sets. Every single item made with the same attention to detail that had gone into those first experimental batches in Margot's kitchen. 2 years after walking out of that restaurant, Reclaim Candles was in over 200 stores nationwide. We'd been featured in major magazines. Our Instagram following had grown to over 100,000. And I, Laverna, from Kansas City, who was supposedly too pathetic to survive without her husband, was worth more than he had ever been. I bought a penthouse apartment. Nothing too flashy, but beautiful and comfortable, and entirely my own. I decorated it exactly the way I wanted, with warm colors and soft fabrics and candles burning in every room. I hired people I believed in and paid them well. I built a culture where everyone's ideas mattered, where no one was dismissed or diminished or made to feel small. And every single day I woke up knowing that I had created this. Not Derek, not anyone else. Me. I did not expect to see Derek again, but life has a funny way of bringing things full circle. 2.5 years after that anniversary dinner, I was invited to speak at a conference for women entrepreneurs. It was being held at one of Chicago's most prestigious hotels, and I was the keynote speaker asked to share my story of transformation and success. I had prepared my speech carefully. I wanted it to be honest, but not bitter, inspirational, but not preachy. I wanted other women who felt stuck or diminished to hear my words and know that change was possible. I arrived early to check the venue and review the setup. The conference hall was beautiful, all windows and natural light, with seats for 500 people. The thought of that many faces looking at me should have been terrifying, but somehow it felt right. I was walking through the hotel lobby when I heard a familiar voice. Laverna. I turned, and there was Derek. He looked different. Older, obviously, but it was more than that. Something in his posture had changed. He seemed smaller somehow, though he had not lost any height. His suit was expensive but rumpled. His hair was graying at the temples in a way that did not look distinguished so much as exhausted. Derek. I kept my voice neutral. This is unexpected. He stepped closer, and I could see it in his eyes. Uncertainty, nervousness, things I had never seen in Derek before. I heard about the conference, he said. I saw your name. I thought maybe... He trailed off as if he did not know how to finish the sentence. You thought maybe what... I thought maybe we could talk, just for a minute. I looked at this man who had once held my entire world in his hands, who had used those hands to crush me slowly and methodically until I almost forgot I existed. We can talk, I said, "but I have a speech to give in 2 hours, so make it quick." We found a quiet corner of the hotel bar. Derek ordered whiskey. I ordered sparkling water. "You look incredible," he said. "I mean, you look happy." "I am happy. The business is amazing. I see your candles everywhere now. It is really something." "Thank you." He stared into his glass for a long moment. "Things have not been great for me since you left." I waited. I did not feel the need to fill the silence. "Caroline," he said finally. "I thought she was different. I thought she understood me. Turns out she was more interested in my money than me. When things at the company went south, she disappeared pretty fast." I said nothing. "They downsized last year, eliminated my position. Vice president of sales, 15 years with the company, and they just let me go." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Ironic, right? I spent all that time climbing the ladder thinking I was so important, and it turned out I was just as replaceable as everyone else." "I am sorry that happened to you," I said, and I meant it. Not because I forgave him, but because I no longer needed to see him suffer to feel whole. Derek looked up at me, and I saw something I had never seen before in his eyes. Regret. "I was wrong," he said quietly. "About everything. About you. About us. I was so focused on becoming someone important that I forgot to be someone good. I treated you like you did not matter, and the truth is, you were the only thing that actually mattered." He reached across the table, but I moved my hands away. "I know it is too late," he continued. "I know I do not deserve anything from you, but I needed you to know that I see it now. I see what I had and what I threw away, and I am sorry. I am so sorry." I looked at Derek, really looked at him for what felt like the first time in years. I saw a broken man who had confused success with happiness and status with value. I saw someone who had lost everything that actually mattered in pursuit of things that ultimately meant nothing, and I felt something I did not expect: compassion. "Derek," I said gently, "I forgave you a long time ago, not for your sake, but for mine. Carrying that anger and hurt was only weighing me down. I had to let it go to move forward." "Does that mean—" He looked hopeful, almost desperate. "No." I said it kindly but firmly. "It does not mean we could try again. It does not mean going backward. I have worked too hard to build this life to give any part of it up." "I understand." His voice cracked slightly. "I just wanted you to know that I know. I know what I did, and if I could go back—" "You cannot go back. None of us can." I stood up, gathering my things. "But you can go forward. You can learn from this and become someone better. That is what I did. That is what saved me." He nodded, looking down at the table. "Goodbye, Derek. I hope you find whatever you are looking for." I walked away without looking back. Again. 2 hours later, I stood on a stage in front of 500 women sharing my story. I talked about the years of diminishment. I talked about that night in the restaurant. I talked about the tiny apartment and the failed candles and the sleepless nights when I questioned everything. And I talked about rising, about discovering that the person everyone told you that you could not be was actually the person you were meant to be all along. "Do not ever let anyone define your worth," I said, and my voice was steady. "Not a husband, not a boss, not society, not even yourself on your worst days. You are capable of more than you know, and sometimes the breaking is exactly what you need to finally become whole." The applause was thunderous. People stood. Some were crying. I looked out at that sea of faces, each one belonging to a woman with her own story, her own struggles, her own potential for transformation. And in the back of the room, I saw Derek slipping out the door. His head was bowed. His shoulders were heavy. But I thought I saw something else in his posture, too. Maybe it was the beginning of change. Maybe it was just regret. Either way, it was no longer my concern. I had an empire to run. Healing did not happen overnight. Anyone who tells you it does is either lying or selling something. Those first months after leaving Derek were brutal. I would wake up in the middle of the night, heart pounding, suddenly unsure if I had made a terrible mistake. I would see happy couples on the street and wonder what was wrong with me that I could not make my own marriage work. I would catch myself reaching for my phone to text Derek out of sheer habit, only to remember that there was no one on the other end anymore. I started seeing a therapist, a calm woman named Dr. Patterson, who had the kind of presence that made you feel safe just sitting in her office. She helped me understand that what I had experienced had a name: emotional abuse. It was not dramatic or violent, so I had trouble recognizing it for what it was. But the constant dismissal, the subtle mockery, the systematic undermining of my confidence, those were forms of harm too. You did not imagine it, Dr. Patterson told me, and you were not being too sensitive. You were being systematically diminished by someone who was supposed to love you. The fact that you recognized it and left takes incredible strength. Slowly, very slowly, I started to believe her. The friendships I made during this time were unlike any I had before. Diana became more than a business partner. She became a mentor, someone who had walked her own difficult path and come out stronger. Margot was always there, same as she had been in college, ready with bad jokes and good wine, and the kind of loyalty that never wavers. I hired women at Reclaim who reminded me of myself, talented people who had been overlooked or underestimated or pushed aside. I created opportunities for them the way I wish someone had created opportunities for me. Watching them flourish became one of my greatest joys. About a year after the divorce was finalized, I started dating again. It felt strange at first, almost impossible. How do you trust someone new when the last person you trusted hurt you so deeply? I went on awkward coffee dates that led nowhere. I had dinners that started promising and ended disappointing. I almost gave up entirely, deciding that maybe I was meant to be alone, and maybe that was okay. Then I met James. James was an architect who had redesigned a friend's house. We met at a housewarming party, and he spent most of the evening asking me questions about my business, genuinely curious about how candles were made and why certain scents combined well together. Not in a patronizing way, not in a way that made me feel like I was being humored, in a way that made me feel seen. Our first real date was a disaster. The restaurant lost our reservation. The backup place gave us food poisoning, and we ended up eating gas station snacks in his car while it rained outside. We laughed so hard we cried. James is not like Derek in any way. He celebrates my successes instead of minimizing them. He asks for my opinions and actually listens to my answers. He tells me I am brilliant on my good days and holds me on my bad ones without trying to fix everything. He understood from the beginning that I was not looking for someone to complete me. I was already complete. I was looking for someone to walk beside me as equals. We have been together for almost 2 years now. It is not perfect because nothing is perfect, but it is real. It is honest. It is everything I did not know I deserved until I learned to give it to myself first. The lessons I learned along this journey are simple, but they took me half a lifetime to understand. Do not sacrifice your identity for anyone, no matter how much you love them. Relationships should make you more yourself, not less. The people who try to diminish you are usually doing so because they are afraid of what you might become. Your growth threatens them. That is their problem, not yours. It is never too late to start over. I was 34 when I walked out of that restaurant with nothing but my dress and my dignity. Now I am 37 and I have built something I could not have imagined. Healing is not linear. Some days you will feel strong and confident. Other days you will feel like you are back at square one. Both of these are normal. Both of these are part of the process. And finally, your worth is not determined by how someone else treats you. It is determined by how you treat yourself. If you are watching this and you recognize yourself in my story, if you are in a relationship where you feel invisible, dismissed, or small, I want you to know that you are not crazy. You are not too sensitive. You are not asking for too much by wanting to be treated with basic respect and dignity. You deserve a full life, not a half life spent in someone else's shadow. It took me 10 years to learn that lesson. I hope it does not take you that long. Today, Reclaim Candles is a multi-million-dollar company with products in stores across the country. We donate a portion of every sale to organizations that support women rebuilding their lives after abusive relationships. We have helped thousands of people, and we are just getting started. But honestly, the business is not the thing I am most proud of. The thing I am most proud of is this. I looked in the mirror one morning about 6 months ago, and I finally recognized the woman looking back at me. She was strong. She was confident. She was kind without being weak. She knew her worth and did not need anyone else to validate it. She was someone I was proud to be. The empire I built is not just candles. It is not just money or success or recognition. The empire I built is myself, my self-respect, my independence, my freedom, and that is something no one can ever take away. So if you are out there wondering whether you should stay or go, whether you can make it on your own, whether you are capable of more than everyone tells you, let me answer those questions for you. Yes, yes, and yes. You are capable of things that will astonish you, but you will never discover them until you give yourself permission to try. Do not wait for permission. Do not wait for the perfect moment. Do not wait for someone else to tell you that you are ready. Just take the first step, and then the next one, and the next. Before you know it, you will be standing somewhere you never dreamed possible, looking back at how far you have come. And you will wonder why you ever doubted yourself in the first place. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to walk away from something that was holding you back? Have you ever discovered strength you did not know you had? Drop your story in the comments below. I read every single one, and your words might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If this story touched you, please take a moment to hit that like button. It helps more people find these stories of hope and transformation. And if you want to join this community of people who believe in second chances and new beginnings, click subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. Please share this with someone who needs to hear it today. You never know whose life you might change just by pressing that share button. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. Thank you for listening with open hearts. I hope you walk away from this story knowing that no matter where you are right now, no matter how stuck or small or invisible you feel, there is a version of your life waiting for you that is bigger and brighter than you can imagine. You just have to be brave enough to reach for it. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Remember your worth, and never ever let anyone tell you that you are not enough, because you are. You always were, and you always will be.